is your First Lady, Ms. Bernadine Truth, alongside.
It's your man, NIC.
And we are the Urban Collective Show. Ladies and gentlemen, it is that part of our segment where we have the amazing honor and privilege to introduce you all to one of our celebrity guests. And our celebrity guest this week is the one and only, none other, Willie Mandrel. Willie is a lifelong resident of Boston. Willie is very familiar with the city's neighborhoods and has a deep, intuitive understanding of the local real estate market. He spent his early years watching his grandparents acquire and manage rental property throughout the city and was able to learn many aspects of the business early on. Now, as a full-time real estate investor and landlord, he prides himself on staying current with local sales and rental trends. Willie has a real passion for the multifamily industry and specializes in buying, repositioning, and managing income-producing property. So if you don't know, now you know. Willie is in the field of real estate.
Welcome, man. Welcome. Nice having you on.
Appreciate you guys having me.
So Willie, we always like to, kind of start off our interviews by telling our guests and tell the people what is something they wouldn't know about you just by listening to your bio.
Something you wouldn't know about me just by listening to my bio. I'm an old man, and I think you guys got the sense of that from me coming in here. I told you I wouldn't know how to go live on Instagram.
That's all right.
No, I've been an old man since I was young. I mean, like I said, I've been got into real estate when I was 23, and I spent my 20s and my early 30s doing this. Kind of skipped the whole club scene, skipped the going out on the weekends. Yeah. It's paying dividends in my 30s, and I imagine it will so in my 40s. But I guess that'd be the one thing. And again, most of the people that know me pretty well. It's Old Man Will.
Old Man Will.
Like
We'll have to call you that segment. Old Man Will. But speaking of that, though, so like you're talking about how you have like the old soul and you've always had it since you were younger. What inspired you to go into the world of real estate itself, of all things you can do, and like give up the clubbing days and not socializing in Boston that way?
It was a couple different things. My grandmother, I kind of followed her lead into the business. My grandfather was a military man, so he wasn't around as much when we were younger. And she, watched her kind of acquire real estate and kind of do her thing. And then the other side of it, one of the things that, the story that I don't tell so often is doing what I wasn't expected to do, right? I think as a black man in America, it's expected that to be successful we have to kind of take a couple different avenues. It's sports, it's the music industry, it's entertainment. I've been since I was very young, always wanted to do what people didn't think that I could do. Building a big business and becoming wealthy in a white collar field like real estate is not necessarily expected of me, and that kind of motivated me from the very beginning as well to kind of build something amazing and be in a position of power, accumulate wealth, but do it in an unconventional way when it comes to people of color, should I say.
Gotcha.
So you said that your grandparents were the ones that got into real estate. Have you ever asked them why they got into real estate, especially back in those days when I assume it was a little bit harder for black folks to get loans and get approved and everything?
Right, like redlining,
exactly.
Yep, no, absolutely. My grandparents experienced a lot of what, like I said, the redlining, blockbusting, difficulty with lenders. My grandmother was what the term, I'm not sure when it was coined, but the accidental landlord. She didn't take that first step into going into the real estate business thinking I'm going to build this amazing business. It was more or less, I know I need a place to live. Instead of renting it from someone else, why don't I buy my own and then take these rooms and rent it out to other people? I think the term from Bigger Pockets, or one of the things, is called house hacking is what she did. She was in the 50s house hacking. She basically bought a house and rented out rooms. Slowly was decided that, like I said, as the mortgage was paid down, she said, I don't really need this many people in my house anymore. Started to move those people out. And then, as things started to change, the neighborhood started to change, Copley, the Prudential Center came, she started to, see some equity there, was able to kind of tap into that and go and buy some of these other places that she kind of rented out. So she kind of backdoored into it, was the accidental landlord, so to speak. And then from there, she, kind of preached it to my father, who I had mentioned to you guys before. Didn't necessarily follow in her footsteps, and when I came along and my brothers came along, she really wanted us to kind of say, look, I mean, since you've been alive, have you known me to work? And the answer was no. I mean, she's always been living off that rental income that was coming in, and she said, look, if this is, like I said, you can do this, as well. Look what I've built for myself. If you, I'm a black woman from the South with a 6th grade education, you'll have the ability to go to college, and if you can take if I'm able to do this, just imagine what you can do with a college education, So that was what her, philosophy, and that kind of stuck with me. So
I love that for many reasons, right? One is you're saying from the very beginning, you wouldn't. This is not a particular role or wasn't a particular field that at the time, and that's still argued till this day, right? That a lot of like black men were in, and so now here you are in a position too where your grandmother happened to fall into it, but was able to thrive in it. Was she? In these terms, and you also mentioned like you're not sure when these terms were in fact coined. Was she aware of what was taking place and then intentionally worked on strategies to persist through it, or did she also happen to understand like, oh, this is a booming market, like let me make something happen? Like, what was her level of awareness? Like, what inspired her to be more knowledgeable of real estate to begin
sure.
with?
I think she fell into it initially, and then I think it made sense to her after that. I think the acquisition of housing, taking those rooms or those units and renting them out to other people and having them pay down the mortgage and having the property appreciate. And she definitely did see the neighborhood changing. When you see, a neighborhood like the South End, and again, I wasn't around in the 50s, but for what I'm told, it was, it was the slums. It wasn't the neighborhood it is right now. And then you start to see, the Prudential Center, and these high-rise buildings start to come in and the neighborhood start to change. I think she took note of that and basically said, let me continue to do what I'm doing and continue to acquire real estate.
How old were you when you all started having these conversations? And when you say your brothers, were they older or younger than
I'm the oldest. I have 2 younger brothers, and I can't remember the day when these conversations started. She started instilling these values in us from the very
womb. Hey, yo, grandchild of mine, your daddy wasn't listening, so I'm gonna let you know what you about to do once you pop out.
Right. There was no. I don't remember when I was 10. It was literally from as long as I can remember. I remember, very early, the broom was still taller than me, and I was sweeping down the steps, outside of one of the rentals. I was knocking on the door like, hey, where's that $100? Where's that $200? Grandma told you to come up, and by the way, here's a sweet potato pie for, for
not hurting me.
Right.
And then trying to get back to grandma.
Right, and then I remember her being in the office, and just kind of, going over receipts and, the plumbing expenses or whatever else that, that was there. So there was never a point where I don't remember her kind of, instilling these values in us. So
when growing up, did you ever think that, or not ever think, did you ever want to go somewhere else or to go a different route at all? In your teens, I know somebody's, parents are telling you, hey, I want you to do this, learn from me. A lot of times kids want to go the opposite directions. Yeah. Was that ever a thought?
I wouldn't say the opposite direction. I went to Northeastern University here. I went for finance, and part of the reason, this is when I say I was always the person that was kind of like, if you're not supposed to do something, or if you think that I'm not supposed to do it, I'm going to do it, right? My father was given a full ride by my grandparents to Northeastern. Didn't go. He went through, I think, 3 or 4 semesters, cashed out and, got hooked on drugs and did a bunch of things. So when I came along, it sounds silly that I've kind of been doing this my whole life, but the fact that he wasn't able to make it through motivated me to go and make it through, right? So when I got there, I was kind of going for general business. I fell in love with the finance side. I fell in love with economics. I love learning the way the world works and how money flows through the economy. I love learning about the Federal Reserve and how banks lend out money and how they make interest rates are set. Those things really interested me. So when I got out of school, I got into financial services. I was working with a local brokerage, managing stockbrokers. I was in compliance. I was the guy that knocked on their door and told them they were doing things wrong. But that in hindsight helped me out a lot in the real estate industry. I'm actually glad that I had that experience in banking. I worked for Citizens Bank for a little while, Bank of America, did some teller work. I wasn't good at actually hand counting money. I actually was asked to go to investment services after my drawer was short $2,500 on multiple occasions.
Oh wow.
I'm good at digitally. I'm just, like I said, hand to hand. You do too many transactions. I was in one of those in-store branches as well. They didn't close till 7:30. You're there till noon. You're hungry, and I'm not good when I'm hungry. I start giving people extra money.
Right. I'm sure the people were happy. They were like, yo, let me tell y'all.
Yeah, they were probably happy.
He was supposed to give me $5. He gave me $500.
Right. Exactly.
Life is great.
Yeah. No, it was. So those experiences, I think, helped me to get to where I am today. Couple that with my grandmother's pushing us to get into the real estate business. I remember getting out of college, or actually while I was still in college, looking at because I'm kind of crazy. I told you I'm an old man. I was finished up my college career in night school at Northeastern while I was working part-time job and a full-time job. So it was kind of I couldn't wait to get out of college. I wanted to make money early. So I think that third year, I know like I said, Northeastern's 5. I think that third year I was kind of like, I got to go get a job and finish up the last 2 in night school. So it benefited me because while I was still in college, had the opportunity of buying a house. Was
in
going
undergrad.
In
undergrad.
undergrad.
Bought a house in undergrad.
Exactly. So went to my grandma, was telling her this is what I wanted to do, and she said, do not buy the condo that you want to buy. I wanted to buy this slick condo and kind of just have this roof deck and overlooking the city, and she said, go buy the multifamily. And I'm glad I listened to her. It was, getting those first couple rent checks was, the greatest feeling, and I had just been hooked ever since. I looked at it and I said, my mortgage is, I can't remember the exact numbers at the time, but let's call it $2,500. And someone's giving me $1,500, every month. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, I'm paying a good majority of my mortgage, How do I take this and amplify it? And, I kind of been hooked in the business ever since.
How many homes do you now owe, or own, not owe?
Always, there's part of it. You got mortgages on every single one of them. So,
this is true.
I'm quite
sorry.
about 30 units right now. Just got rid of, I've been in a kind of a consolidation phase. I have had my second kid, and before having kids, I was kind of all over the place. I was looking at Worcester. I was looking at, I was out on the North Shore doing things in Lowell. In the last, I would say 6 to 9 months, my son is 6 months now. So about the time where we knew he was coming, I decided to start consolidating things. My properties are all in Dorchester, Roxbury, Mattapan now. Sold Worcester, sold Lowell, sold some of the things that were on the outskirts. Made it easier for myself to manage the portfolio. So everything is literally right in my backyard.
So with all those properties, are you having your own management team to do? I know it's a lot that goes behind being a landlord for one property. So having multiple properties, are you doing it yourself, or are you hiring like an outside service?
Right now, I'm still managing properties, but it is a point. I'm literally thinking that on the way over here, I'm going to have to get rid of that at some point. I'm going to have to delegate and hire a management company, have to leverage myself out, use that people leverage, someone else's expertise. It is a lot. Like you said, it is a lot to kind of try to, my goal, or what should be my goal, is the acquisition side. I should be going out, looking at new opportunities, going out, figuring out how to finance these things, bringing in partners, doing what I need to do. The management side is something I'm going to have to get rid of pretty soon. If I'm going to grow the way I would like to.
So I always hear about the highs, about you're getting your money, you're getting your income. So what are some of the lows of owning multiple properties? Because a lot of people, they hear about the money and they focus on that part, but I've heard from people that I know in that field personally that tells me there's a lot that comes with it. You're not thinking about you having to fix the property, something goes bad, you have to upfront money and all of that. So what are some of the lows that you've experienced and that you can help other listeners be like, hey, look out for these things if you're looking to go into that field?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, real estate is a beautiful thing on one side because it you're making money every single day, and it's lovely because, like I said, I mean, as I'm sitting here talking to you, right, time is passing and someone else is, like I said, someone's living in our units and someone, like I said, someone has to pay rent. So that's the beautiful side of it. The other side of it is, Thanksgiving is coming up, Christmas is coming up. If a hot water tank or a furnace goes, or there's no heat on one of those days, I don't have the luxury of basically saying, hey, I'm off today, boss. I'm off, boss man. It's a weekend, it's a holiday. If someone needs me, I need to be there, right? I mean, I'm in a position where If someone doesn't have heat on Christmas, I need to get out there and make sure and make some phone calls, regardless of whether I'm sitting with my children or what I'm doing that day. So there are some challenges to it. There are, what most people don't understand about real estate is it works in cycles. And I mentioned to you, I love the economic side of it, right? I love economics and learned a big piece about, market cycles. Real estate right now, we are in what I would describe as a seller's market, right? There is very little inventory out there. It's harder to find deals. But right now, we're also in a great time for lending. Banks are saying, take the money. We need opportunity. We need you. So lending is easy. Finding deals are hard. My job right now is going out there and finding good opportunities. I'm probably looking at 100 and buying 3 for every 100 deals that I look at. So I mean, there's a lot of time taken up there. The other side of it is when deals are abundant, so to speak, lending is probably going to be difficult. So you constantly have to be in this business. I guess to answer your question, one of the challenges is constantly networking, constantly going out there, meeting new lenders, meeting new wholesalers and agents, and telling people what you want. A lot of people get into this business and they assume that they can just buy one house and just kind of just ride it out. If you really want to build something, it takes time to build a portfolio. I can, not to kind of drone on, but you asked me how many units I owned, and those were not. There's an assumption that I probably bought 3 and then bought 3 the next year and then bought. Most of those were acquired in the last 4 to 5 years, and because it's what I describe as the airplane effect. It takes very little.
To take off, but to sustain.
Exactly. So I mean, you have to have a lot of thrust, a lot of power in the beginning to really push yourself off of the runway, and then you get to a certain point where you're coasting, and that's what it is. And a lot of people don't realize that. They think that things are just kind of incremental, and you just kind of in year 1 he probably bought one, in year 3 he bought another. It doesn't work like that. You have to push. It takes, I probably bought one and then probably didn't. Then I actually bought my first property in 2006. We had a market correction, a downturn. For those of you who are familiar, 2008, 2009, 2010, but then there's opportunity. 2010, 2011, 2012, we bought 2014, 2016. So, hopefully I didn't drone on too much to answer your question. I mean, the biggest part of it, the challenge is, yes, you do have plumbing and and maintenance issues, but that's not really where it is. The hard part is mentally, constantly preparing yourself and pushing yourself, and if you do that and you're successful at that, you can be great in this business. So
I mean, I'm super grateful for your insight too, as far as like owning the property and helping people to understand that it's not an overnight process, right? So I'd want to bring it back to that. One is, how long did it take you to decide on a property, right? Where you're like, oh, this is one I truly want to invest in. Were any of them like fixer-uppers, or were they all kind of like ready to go? And then the other part of that question is just like, so now you bought it, how do you decide who fills them? What is the journey of like picking ideal tenants?
Gotcha.
And what does that look like? Yeah,
so the first part of that question is, in the very beginning, I would encourage anybody to get into this business to buy what I call rent-ready properties. So you're buying stuff that's already, fixed up, ready to go. The ideal situation is you're going to get this mortgage, you put in 3.5% down on an FHA loan, maybe you're putting 5% down on your second property, maybe you're putting 20% down on the third one, but you're buying rent-ready properties. You don't really want to get into the construction business yet. You really want to learn what it's like to be a landlord, what it's like to have those expenses and manage property and manage through vacancies. After that, you get to a certain point in your career where it makes sense to go out and instead of buying into the property, you create the equity. So now I'm looking for distressed properties, things that all the windows are bad, the roof is leaking, the front door is kicked in, the furnaces don't work, things not insulated. I want to go in and buy that property at a good value, a win-win for myself and the seller. I'm never trying to take advantage of anything or anybody. You want to create a win-win situation for you and the person selling. Rehab that property, create value, fix it up, put new windows in, put a new roof on, insulate the the property, put new heating systems in there, and then go out and.
That sounds like money.
It is.
I'm like, goodness.
It takes money to make money.
It does.
But that's just like
that is the one thing that you're absolutely right. You cannot. This is not a small money. Real estate is not a small money business. You can't go into this and be like this with $100 or $500. You have to be able to say, look, here's what I'm. If people want to go into this business and they say, I want to make $100 grand, or I want to make $200 grand, or I want to be a millionaire. Well, you can't be holding on to $100 bill with your fists clenched up to it if you really want to do that. It takes money to make money, and scared money don't make money, right? So yeah, I mean,
scared money also gets scary. I'm like, sometimes people be. I'm just saying. I gotta go on the balance, because I've also heard people be like, "Yo, I made some bad investments."
No, it does.
You know what I mean?
But that's the second part of your question, right? That's the second part of your question. Why did I pull out of Lowell? It wasn't just a consolidation. Why did I pull out of Worcester? I don't know those markets. What I do know is I grew up in Dorchester. I went, I played ball at Dudley Street Park. I went to the Dearborn Middle School. I grew up in Upton's Corner, so this is my backyard. And I tried to leave, and it just didn't make a lot of sense. This is where I can go, and when I say, hey, I literally go into 100 properties to buy 2 or 3. That's not a waste of time. Every single one of those properties I go into, I'm learning something. I'm experiencing something. I'm saying, why doesn't this work? Or so when I recognize that those 2 or 3, when you say, how do I know? You know it because you've been inside enough and you know your craft well enough that I know what a triple decker in Dorchester sells for. I know what, if you tell me, hey, I get to give you some hard numbers. If you tell me a 3-family in Boston is selling for $500,000 right now, you tell me what the square footage is on, let's say it's 3,000 square foot, I don't need to see that building. You tell me, give me the contract right now, and I'll buy it. The shell is worth $500,000, right? Because I've been inside enough of these, and I know what it's worth at the end of it. I can put $250,000 into that thing and have it be worth $900,000 at the end of the day. So I'm into it for $750,000. I've just created $150,000 in equity within that property. So I would encourage anybody in any business, if you're a baker, or if you're in automotive, to. And I have a couple of consulting clients I work with as well. One gentleman who in particular, who's a contractor, and he's kind of new to the business, and I'm trying to advise him that you don't want to be the contractor who's fixing up windows and doing roofs and doing basements and doing flooring. The real money is made in specialty, and that's what I try to create within the real estate industry. I'm not trying to go to Back Bay and invest in condos. I'm not trying to go to I don't flip property. Everybody comes into this business and they say, well, do you flip? And I stay away from flips, because that's another specialty, right? My primary focus is buy and hold rentals, Dorchester, Roxbury, Mattapan. That's the neighborhoods I know, the areas I know, because that's my craft. It's something I specialize in, my niche. The other side of your question is, the third part of your question is, how do I select good tenants?
Those can make or break your properties.
They absolutely will. Absolutely. Management is a big part of it. It's difficult. I mean, you don't know. I mean, you're given a couple pieces of paper, and you're supposed to basically determine someone's whole life, or who they are, their character, based on their social security number, credit report. And I mean, it's very difficult. I mean, I have people that I've accepted with 500 credit scores who, in my head, you shouldn't. I mean, the goal said, everything in real estate books says you probably shouldn't take that tenant. They've been the best tenants ever, right? And I've had other gentlemen, no joke, this is a true story. One kid, him and his girlfriend, he had a red Mercedes, she had a white Mercedes. He went to Harvard, she went to Yale. They were probably the worst tenants I've ever had in my life. Worst tenants. So
what did they do? Because I'll give you. It's like not everything that's
I'll give you one example, and I hopefully he's not long gone from Boston. He's gonna listen to this.
Even if you are, listen to your mistakes.
It was years ago.
But
listen to this. So he lived on the 3rd floor of a triple decker, right? And anybody who knows Boston, these things weren't built yesterday, right?
Yeah. You're taking stairs.
They're 100-year-old buildings.
Exactly.
He decided he wanted to put a treadmill inside his living room on the 3rd floor of a 100-year-old building, and tell me I didn't have problems with the tenants down below. I mean, you got boards that are 100-year-old just shaking like this.
He's probably running, right?
Think about
He's not taking a casual stroll on a treadmill.
His wife was too beautiful to go to the YMCA. He had to buy the treadmill and put it in the living room. Oh, wow. And she was jogging upstairs, and I'm just kind of like, you think about it. Anybody who's been to a gym or the YMCA, when someone's on a treadmill, you can hear it from across the room. It's boom, 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 boom. That inside of a residential building that wasn't built yesterday is a problem. I live in a pretty new house, and I mean, I can hear my kids running back and forth, and my insulation's this thick through the. I'm just kind of like, so it's those things where that was one example. There's some other things, but I don't want to You know,
no, you gotta talk about it.
I don't want to.
That's the point of our
I
show.
don't want
We'll put the whole show talking about that.
I don't want to out the whistleblower.
Exactly.
No, because I'm like, this is what people have to think about. Because I mean, I think that there are a lot of people who are like home ownership, multi-families, yes and no, like, you know, or I'm gonna go for it. But as a child who grew up in a household where my mother was a landlord, and I mean, I've watched tenants come in and out, you know. We've had, I mean, and my mother's like really supportive. She's taking people on Section 8. She's taking people who will pay. She's trying to cut people deals. But sometimes she had to let people go because she was ready for new tenants or like had to do something for the family. And people destroyed the house or people got angry and people didn't pay bills. Like, there are things you really have to consider with who are you allowing. Because at the end of the day, it's your property, right? Yep. But you're bringing people, inviting people into your home, like there are real things you have to consider. It's not like that's just my homie, so I'm gonna give him a deal in the house.
I'll give you 3 points. I'll give you 3 points.
It's real.
Money and blood don't mix. And I know you know the rest. I know y'all know the rest. That was Biggie Smalls. Money and blood don't mix, and he said it best. And I try to stay away from friends and family. That is the number one. Anyone I'm talking to, and I'm also a real estate agent as well. Talk to clients. Hey, when you get this thing, you gonna let your mother, all right, you know, like I said, you better expect it. I'm probably gonna be buying this from you in about 6 months because she's not gonna pay you, you know. So money and blood don't mix. I would say if you're gonna be in business, treat it like a business, and take it from there. The other thing I could say, or 2 more points, is you can the advice I would give to a new landlord is to be friendly but not friends, right? I made that mistake early in my career. I'm living, especially if you live there, you know, there's a barbecue, and I'm like, come down, get some ribs, get some chicken, blah, blah, and all of a sudden we're in the friend zone, right? And I'm not talking about, you know, different friend zone. We're in the friend zone, and hey, man, I ain't got that, you know, that 500 I owe you. I'll get it to you next week. Oh, but so you're going to do me like that? You know, so I would say, hey, how you doing? Good to see you, blah, blah. You know, how's the weather? Friendly, but not friends. You want to keep it in that.
Talk.
Exactly. Elevated. That's exactly what it is. And the third thing I would say is there is nothing wrong with Section 8. There's this false narrative out there that, you know, like that Section 8 tenants are going to come in and they're going to mess up your place, whatever like that. There is no requirement and no law that says you have to treat someone with a Section 8 voucher differently than someone who's a market rate tenant, meaning you can still require a security deposit, right? You can still require a good credit score. And you can still require somebody to have additional income outside of that security deposit, because I made that mistake as well. Oh, they got the voucher, they don't need, well then now the heat's off in the middle of the winter and it's a problem, right? Because my pipes in my building are now frozen because they couldn't afford their heat. So if you tell me, hey, someone has a voucher from Boston Housing or Metropolitan Housing or whatever, they have a 650 or 675 credit score, they're also working, and they're giving him a security deposit, I'd take that all day over someone who's off the street, you know, and you know, has a good credit score and a job. You can lose that job easier. They're less likely to lose that voucher, you know, than moving in. So I mean, I think that, you know, the narrative that Section 8 tenants are problems or you should avoid them, I think that's false. It just, you don't have to have a separate set of criteria, and I think that, you know, like I said, you should you know, approach everyone with the same set of criteria, and I think you'd be better off with, you know, voucher tenant.
I love it. Okay.
Yeah, going back a little bit, I know you were talking about you invest mainly in where you grew up. So I always hear all the time where people are talking about, hey, you know, you should invest in a place like Florida or Miami, where you turn that into Airbnbs, becoming big and very popular nowadays. And you hear it all over the news or in the Cape or something like that. Are you against doing something like that, where telling the person, whether it's your first property or a couple of properties later, are you against somebody investing and doing those type of investments where you're investing the places 100 miles away, 500 miles, 1,000 miles away?
You're about to send me on a tangent right now.
I love it.
So a couple different points I would say about that is, one is, you know, I'm a follower of Warren Buffett, and Warren Buffett said when everyone is running right, you got to look left, right? Or he said something along those lines, right? If everybody's running right, unless there's a fire, then I'm gonna run right with the rest of y'all. But you know, in business, everybody's running right. Everybody's running to a Bitcoin right now. Don't even know what Bitcoin is, but they're running towards it, right? Everybody's running to Florida. Everybody's running to Airbnb. I'm looking left and I'm saying what opportunities are over here, because people are always looking for the easiest way. They want to be the first one in, or they discovered this magical pill that, no, real estate is very simple. I mean, I think, not to be rude, but I think I was told that it was real estate and prostitution is the oldest two businesses in the world. There's not too many things that
when you think about it.
Yeah, I mean that precede those two things, right?
I was thinking,
I'm about to take that places. I'm gonna be like Willie Tommy. They'll be like, who? I'll be like Willie.
Not to be rude, I don't know where I heard that from, but it was real estate and prostitution, the old two business world. People try to make real estate more complex than it needs to be. You buy a building, again, my grandmother, black woman from the South who moved up to Boston with a 6th grade education and made multi-millions, right? It's not that complex, and people try to Airbnb it, or they try to Bitcoin it, they try to do all this other stuff. I don't invest in things that I don't understand or I don't believe in. Here's the other thing we say about Boston, you say about Florida. This is why I love economics. If you look at, market cycles tell you that Florida, what is Florida? Florida is the baby boomer state, right? A retirement state. Retirement. Everybody goes down there, and the vacation place, right? When me and my wife are already talking about May and June and where we go and everything. So Florida is great for that, but what does the economy look like in Florida, right? So if I'm buying vacation homes and all this other things, and the economic situation changes at home, what is the first thing to suffer, right?
Not going on your vacation.
Right, the vacation home. I'm getting rid of it. I'm selling it. I'm getting rid of it. I'm dumping it or whatever. But I'm not selling my primary residence back here in Boston. So that, and the other thing I would say is, when you think about a place like Boston, right? Let's say the economy is horrible. We have Harvard, MIT, Northeastern, Wentworth. Who is going to get their kid into Harvard and then say, well, the economy's bad, son, I can't send you to Harvard? No, he's still going. And if he's still going, he needs a place to stay. It's as simple as that. That's real estate in Boston. We have some of the best hospitals, some of the best schools. When you talk about Harvard, MIT, BU, BC, Northeastern, Wentworth, I mean, those are institutions that are not going anywhere. And every single one of those international kids that come over from China or Dubai or Suffolk University, those are institutions that are not going anywhere. And if those kids continue to come here, I put it to you this way. I have property in Dorchester that 6 years ago, you wouldn't even imagine Northeastern students coming to. Now UMass Boston students, Northeastern, there's no room. I mean, the South End is only so big. So I mean, Dorchester's starting to get flooded by, and even UMass Boston, a school like UMass Boston is in expanding incredibly, right? And all those international students that are coming over all need a place to stay. So if you have economics like that, though it's tougher to get in here, that initial wall to jump over is a little bit tougher, I would rather own one place here than 3 in some other cities.
So talk to us a little bit more about that too. So, because right now it also sounds like a lot of what's able to fuel or invest in your personal market, like your pocket, are people who might not necessarily be coming from here. What has been your commitment to people from Boston to build on their financial wealth and financial access to mobility through home ownership or property management?
Education. I mean, I've been, I understand that not everybody has, and I hope I'm answering your question right, but not everybody has my grandmother, right? And I joke about this all the time. I do, for years, I've connected with Roxbury Community College, and I would go down to, and I said, how do I share what I know, my experiences? I think especially as what I think is a, how do I put this? If I'm 20 years old and I'm getting out of college and I see somebody who is 55 and they come back and they share their experience and they say, yeah, as a black man you can do this, and black woman you can do this, there's a disconnect. There's 30 years there, right? And I have an easy out. I have an easy excuse to say things are not the same, right? Exactly. You did it back when. Me as someone who's in their 30s, and I've been doing this since I was, since my early 30s and my late 20s, I knew that there was an importance of me going and connecting with people that were in their young, their 20s, getting out of high school, going in college, because there's no that excuse is no longer there, right? I've just done it. I'm still doing it, so you can replicate this as well. So to answer your question, from the beginning, I created a platform called Urban Money Matters. it's been taken over by several other people at this point, but we connected with Roxbury Community College and was offering financial literacy courses to the public. Open all our doors. We would do it from 6 to 8 on a Tuesday, Thursday night. We would teach people about establishing your credit, about budgeting and managing, about real estate, about the opportunities that exist in money, and just kind of opening the doors to whoever wanted to come in. So for me, it's just, how do I, even coming on your show, I'm hoping that I'm reaching somebody who says, yeah, I can do this. This is not that difficult. I hear about it, I read about it, I've read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, but I see this guy who looks like me, who comes from where I come from, and he's doing it, I can do it too. And that's really what I've been trying to preach since day one.
Absolutely. Did your grandmother or family give you any money to start with?
Not initially.
Okay.
My grandmother helped me out with property number 2. Okay. So it was weird. It was I had to pay for college myself. So I look at it as maybe like she helped me out with college, but at the same time, the property number 2, I did take a loan from her and paid her back after that. And it was partly she wanted to help out me and my brothers kind of build that that legacy as well.
Yes.
So
have your brothers also like built alongside you, or
Yes.
are you all on different tiers?
Yes,
Okay.
I mean they I don't want to downplay what my brother's doing, but we all own rental property. We're all in the business. We have a different level of commitment to the business, should I say? But we're all, like I said, landlords, property owners. And I think that's exactly the way she wanted it.
So talking about that, where you and your brothers are in real estate, so some of the things I hear from certain communities say, oh, we'll come together, group of family, group of friends, and invest together and try to get a property, make it easier.
Yep.
And hopefully you can expand in 3 to 5 years and, get another one and add another one so that you can eventually own your own by the end. Are you against that? Are you for that? Where whether it's friends or whether it's family, a group of people, 3 to 5, 2 to 4 people coming together and investing in a property as friends or family to build up their wealth.
Yeah, no, I'm absolutely all for that. When I say money and blood doesn't mix, what I would say is, if you're going to go out with family, if you're going to go out with friends, I think that what people don't do is they don't have hard conversations on the front end, right? And by that I mean everybody goes into this thing, yeah, we're going to make a lot of money, we're going to buy this property, and everything's going to go smoothly. What you need to do is treat every single transaction, whether we're sisters and brothers or whatever, as a business transaction, because that's what you're entering into. I think that you need to have that hard conversation in the beginning and say, what happens if brother 1 dies? Because that's a real concern, right? What happens if brother 2 gets sick and all of a sudden wants to pull his cash out of the deal, right? How do we handle that? What if sister 3's husband and her get divorced? How do we resolve that when now he steps in and he's part of this fold that we have here? So thinking about all the things that can go wrong, you don't want to be the Debbie Downer in the group, but at the same time, anytime I have a partnership now, especially if it's somebody who I would say isn't necessarily, how do I put this? Doesn't bring as much to the table as I do, right? It doesn't have as much experience as I have those hard conversations. We sit down and we say, what if? And if we have those hard conversations on it, we put it together in a Word document or email. You don't have to have an attorney. You can just literally, here's what we're going to do. Sign. Then at least you have an understanding and something that's a basis from the beginning. If you just go into this thing thinking everything, high-fiving and thinking everything is just going to be good, it's not. Things are going to happen, and you need to have a plan to resolve them.
How does that play? And I thank you for that, because that's very real, right? I mean, even in your scenarios, I'm like, yep, that's true. Yep, people get sick, people lose jobs, people get divorced. Yep, things happen. How does that play into home ownership with a partner, somebody you are in fact married to, and what are things that you all had to discuss? Like, how many properties, if you don't mind me asking, you can also choose not to answer, but how many properties did you own prior to being married, and then after, and then how does that, what does one consider in partnership versus what is mine versus what is ours versus what is yours, or what goes to our legacy?
Yeah, no, I mean, here's my take on it. I don't mind answering that question at all. I owned 5 units prior to getting married. I owned a 2-family and a 3-family. My wife has been the greatest contributor to my success. Like I said, I don't think I'd be where I am without her. To give you some background, we both went to Northeastern together. I had known her for 8 years prior to engagement, so it takes me a little while. I do my due diligence. So 8 years, yeah. I do my due diligence before I hop in any investment. Got married at year 10. So I would say let's call it year 6. We knew we were going to get married, right? I wanted her to, she was in that co-op program in Northeast in 6 years. So we talk about 5 years. Pharmacy is 6 years. So it's kind of ridiculous. So I wanted her to get out of school, experience kind of some things before I kind of popped the question. But we knew where we were headed. So I looked at it like this. I said, and again, I don't want to encourage anybody to do anything, on the fringe, should I say. But we knew we were going to get married. And I said, look, multifamilies are a great investment. Why don't you go out and buy yourself a multifamily? And she said, well, I'm still in school and I don't really know. Like I said, I'm fresh out of school, should I say, and I don't really, like I said, I'm looking for the house in the suburbs. I know what you're looking for, but listen to what I'm saying. Go out and buy that multifamily, and then we're going to use it as an investment property, right? So that third acquisition was actually my wife's property, right? The third property that we bought was actually my wife's, and she didn't have any cash, so I gave her the cash. She took the cash, let it sit in her account, and then went out and bought the property, and we still have that property today. So I would say this. I would say that, and again, I'm stepping over in a point where I'm kind of giving marriage advice now, and I don't want to, I'm here to so I don't want to give anybody marriage advice, but I just feel like if you can't trust your wife or your husband with some type of finance, maybe you shouldn't be married. To them. Yeah, you shouldn't be married anyway. Some people look into them, they're like, you gave your wife $10,000, $15,000. Yeah, and then she turned it into $150,000, $300,000 at the end of the day. It's 5-6 years later, or 10 years. I can't remember when we got married now. It's a
don't quote that.
Yeah.
He does remember.
I do remember. I'm just using that for
let the man illustrate it first.
I'm trying to help him too.
Came in to give an interview, and
I
now I got married.
Right, that's what I'm. Listen, secured all the bags.
I'll edit that part out.
All the bags.
So, but yeah, I mean that 10-15 grand turned into let's call it 200,000 today, right? I mean, and that's. So having that trust, I mean, if you're constantly like, this is mine and this is yours, and I have people that are tenants of mine, they paid, he pays 300, she pays 300, he pays. I'm like, y'all just like like I said, that's just marriage is something different, but we do everything together. We like I said, and I think it works well that way. So I mean, I like I said, I trusted her fully then. She trusted me fully because she had to basically say, I'm going to put this 3-family in my name, and I'm going to trust that you're going to take care of what needs to be taken care of. So we had to trust each other, and it's been a beautiful thing because that 3-family actually paid off her student loans from Northeastern a few years ago.
And you all still own this property, you said today, and you still own several properties in Boston. I'm going to ask you another question.
Yep.
Now, we've all been hearing about gentrification taking place in the city of Boston, impacting mostly like the historically marginalized population of people. What is your company's, real estate company's commitment, or like your ideals and all of that commitment to addressing, or maybe even how have you contributed to gentrification?
This is where I kind of expected this question.
I
was kind of
He's like, I'm ready.
Right? I was ready.
He was like, I was driving here.
I was driving here. I was like,
no.
So I knew it was coming at some point, right? So I'm gonna be the contrarian, if that's what I think I'm using that word right. I'm gonna give you the opposite side. I know there's a lot of chatter about gentrification and blah blah blah, and like I said, and how it affects the Black community. And again, gentrification is a real thing. I'm going to give you kind of the devil's advocate side of it. So hopefully none of your listeners are pissed off at me after this. Like, he gave us some really good advice, but I really don't like that kid after. So here's what I'm going to say is gentrification is something that you cannot stop. There's going to be there's not going to be a situation where we are going to stop something that happens. It happened in Brooklyn, it happened in Harlem, it's going to happen in the South End, it's going to happen. So you have a choice, right? You can complain about it and you sit down, and it happened to my grandmother, right? I mean, when she bought in the South End wasn't the South End. She didn't say, hey, don't build that Prudential Center here. Don't make me multi-million dollars. So, I mean, if she was wrong, then I guess I'm wrong as well, because I I'm not saying that I don't recognize it. I'm not saying that it's something that's an issue, but we have a choice. It's something that you can't fight. Like, not to get too political here, but global warming is something that you can't fight, right? I mean, it's coming. So you can either build your house on that same foundation, or you can build up and secure yourself, from the future. And that's what I think about the same way I look at gentrification. I look like, I'm a black man. I'm going to buy as much property as I can in Dorchester, Roxbury, and Mattapan. And when things do happen, I will still be here, and I'll be able to dictate who goes into these units and how much they rent for and everything else. So I would say to the people that are worried about it, get control of property. If you take control of property and you hold on control of property, then there's no gentrification. I mean, you're either going to be benefiting from it or you're going to be controlling it, right? The other side of it is, this is where I may piss some people off, but if you own a home, right? And your home is falling apart, and the roof is caving in and everything else. And I, as a black gentleman, come to you and I say, I'll buy your home from you. And you, as a, and somebody else, as a white gentleman, equal my counterpart, comes to you and says, I'll buy your home for $10,000 more. And you, as the black individual who lives in Mattapan, Dorchester, Roxbury, sells it to that person for $10,000 more. How is he at fault versus the seller at fault? And that's what I would say. I would say that the person who is worried about gentrification and complains about gentrification, but also sells their home to a Caucasian person or an Asian person or whatever, is just as at fault as the person. I don't know that you can blame the white guy who comes in and says, hey, I'm looking to make a profit. It's a two-way street, right? So that's the way I look at it. And I hopefully that makes sense or resonates with someone. It's something that I can't stop. I look at it like global warming. I'm not going to continue to build a house on the beach in the sand. I'm going to build it up to protect myself in the future. And that's the way I look at it. How much property can I buy in Dorchester, Roxbury, Mattapan, in neighborhoods that are changing? But in the future, let's say I'm here and I own 200 units, I'll be able to decide who comes in, what rents are charged, and everything else. Like I said, if I want to say, hey, I want this to be a community for boys that are going through certain things, or I want this to be a battered women's shelter, or I want this to be, I own the real estate, I own the land, and nobody can take that from me, and I can make those decisions in the future.
So when are we gonna build those boys' spaces? And
I mean, like I said, I'm
2020. Coming.
I'm a little early.
2020 is the year of change.
Yeah, I'm a little early for that, but I mean, like I said, but again. If we own the real estate, we can collectively make those decisions, right? I mean, if we want to knock down 3 of these things and build up something, we can collectively make those decisions. But the first thing we have to do is complaining to a certain population of the newspapers or whatever is not going to change anything. There's going to be certain people, we care, and here's what we can do about it, and $1,000 a year for this. It doesn't change anything. You have to own property. You have to scrape, crawl, pinch, climb, dig, do what you can to get that down payment, to get that loan, to get control of that property, and encourage your siblings and your mother and your uncle and everybody else to do the same. And then you can affect change. And that's the only way you're going to be able to do it. Like I said, a lot of politicians, a lot of people, act like they care, but they really don't. So, hopefully that gives you kind of the opposite side of it, coming from somebody of color who owns property in the neighborhood. Like I said, I don't necessarily fault the individual who's coming in to try to make a profit, especially if that person is going to sell them that property.
Exactly.
Like I said.
All I'm saying is I'm counting on Willie for 2023 to see some property.
So I gotta build a Boys and Girls Club in 2023.
You control the property. He said all y'all gotta do as in a position of me right now. You own this, so I'm looking to you to continue to set the tone. You better believe it.
Well, so again,
knocking on your door in 3 years. Like, where's that?
Where's that community center?
The youngest child is 6 months. That child will be about 4 years old by then, walking and more independent. He got it.
No, and again, so in the interim, right? My goal is to continue to do stuff like this, to go out and again educate the public about opportunities in the field. And again, it doesn't necessarily have to be real estate. I mean, I think business owners. There's two ways that I think people build wealth in the country. And again, outside of stock markets and Bitcoin and all the other stuff, I don't really technically believe in those things. I think that you have to be a business owner or you have to be a holder of real estate, and hopefully you're both. So again, you take the same advice and go out and build a great business, or go out and acquire real estate. And if you do those two things, or one of those two things, I think you'll be successful. I mean, one of the last things I'll say is The 9 to 5 thing is dead. I mean, it's really difficult to be to affect change and go out and do the things that you want to do if somebody else is signing your paycheck. And I know, and again, I know that's one of those things where people are going to have an issue with. I know everyone needs a job and people need to work. But if you, and again, I've mentioned this in the past, even if you have a 9 to 5 today, what can you do on the side to create some type of other income that's going to bring something in for you? So not one person or one company or one LLC or Inc. is controlling the outcome of your future. Yeah. So
my last question for you, I guess, will be: so where do you see yourself going in the next few years, in the next 3 to 5 years? Do you plan on becoming a real estate developer? Would you ever get into that field? Or are you just going to say, you know what, just do the properties, amass more property, and do it that way?
And again, not to hit you with another, like I said, I think you can either, have an exciting life, or you can be wealthy and have a very boring life. And what I do is very boring, and I'm going to continue to be boring. And that's just it. Again, when you say development, I do consider myself a developer because I do the construction part of it as well, right? I mean, I buy things that are, I'll buy a piece of land as well if it's for the right price and build a multifamily. But I don't know that I'm going to go out and be a condo developer. All right, I'm not going to go out and build massive condo buildings. That's not what I want to do. Like I said, at the end of the day, it's I'm all about the long term. I'm all about 10, 15, 20 years, retiring comfortably, teaching other people how to do this as well. And I think that the flipping houses, the condo thing, that's all money today. That's how you make money. Real wealth is built in the assets that you acquire that you can hold on to long term, and that's really what I'm all about. So.
My last question to you is about that legacy. So you have 2 children, you said?
Yep.
What are your visions for them, and are you gonna gift them property, or are they gonna have to work for
No,
property?
I'm gonna that's a good question. I'm gonna learn from my grandmother's mistakes and from my father's mistakes, right? I mean, even from day one, like I said, I got them doing a lot of, they get bank accounts already, they 529 plans. I'm learning from all the things that, when I say bank accounts, it's not something I'm feeding, right? We take their birthday gifts and their holiday gifts and their Asian New Year gifts and we put all that stuff in there. I don't think I have an expectation. I would love it if they are in the business. I'm not going to force them to be in the business. I think that you have to make it, you become an adult, you have to make your own decisions. I'm going to make sure that they know everything there is to know about money, regardless of whether they're whether they're an engineer or a doctor or a lawyer. I'm going to make sure that they are financially savvy adults, right? I'm going to make sure that they're not dependent on anybody else in the future, that they understand economics, that they understand the way money flows through the economy, that they understand the power of real estate, the power of owning your own thing, your own piece of land. So I would hope that they would get into the business, but no, I'm not. I'm going to try not to gift them anything. I'm going to help them out where help is needed. But I'm going to learn from my grandmother's lessons and her mistakes with my father, and not hand over things. I'm going to try to. What is it? Teach a man to fish, not give him the fish. Cliche type of thing.
Right.
So
Keep them from starving, but keep them alive. I appreciate it. And I see. Want to end with your last question all the time?
No.
Where can people
Go ahead.
All right. We always like to end off our show and our interviews by asking people how can people stay connected? How can the Urban Collective Show stay connected with you? Where can they find you? Where can they follow you? Pick your brain, etc.
Sure. A couple different things. I mean, I do seminars all the time. I do webinars all the time. If you're looking to learn a little bit more about real estate, it's bostonwealthbuilders.com. You go to Boston Wealth Builders. We have a meetup group. There's 2,000 individuals right now in the group. They're all local investors. We have some in New Hampshire, some in Rhode Island. But it's a great place to meet other people, other like-minded people who are looking to build wealth like you. Sorry, not to drone on, but when I first got into this business, very, very lonely. My brothers didn't necessarily, were a little young at the time. My friends didn't know what I was talking about. They didn't want, so anybody who's out there, it's like, hey, I got this vision. I want to do this thing. I want to build something. You have to go out and meet other people that are like-minded to you. And that Boston Wealth Builders is a great place for that. We have just general networking meetings all around the city. You come and meet other investors. So BostonWealthBuilders.com. It's free to join. Events are mostly free. We're on Instagram. I think it's Boston Wealth Builders on Instagram as well. And then the Mandrell Company on Facebook, which is my real estate brokerage. So any of those two places, Instagram, Facebook, and then our networking meeting, and then our website is just mandrellco.com, mandrellco.com. I forgot how to spell my own last name.
I was like,
it's getting late. So.
I was like, it's not my company.
So I'm pretty sure that's not
I was about to bet you a house on it. No, but honestly, Willie, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing your truth and your wisdom and your